How's it going, everybody? Nick with Roll Heroic, and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode of DM Tips and Tricks, we're talking boss tactics and just how you can get more out of your combat encounters. All right, yep. Roll that intro. So in the last episode, we talked a little bit about boss tactics as far as using legendary actions, stuff like that. So in this episode, we're going to dive further into bosses, enemies, and just how to use them. Why don't we take this to the table? So welcome to the Orc Bandit's Lair. You want to make sure you pick a boss that makes sense for the area your encounter is happening in. I have a pack of orcs, and they're run by their Etten leader. There he is. Grr. In this encounter, I've chosen to run orcs against the party. A band of bandit orcs has layered themselves up inside an old desert tomb. What is this Etten and its orc followers doing here? Perhaps this Etten and its orc bandits are raiding travelers on a nearby road. They come back to this lair to stash their goods. After raiding travelers on the road, these orcs may camp here, making this place their hideout. Now maybe the PCs, these blue minis here, perhaps they were hired by a local merchants guild to hunt down these orcs and their Etten leader, making merchant travel safer. So we know what the PC's objective is. It's to enter the orcs' lair and basically slay them outright. Clear it out, make the roads safer. But what just is the Etten and orcs' objective? It's certainly not to kill every adventurer that comes stumbling into its lair. No, their objective is to raid the local road. Now that might be for other reasons, if you're connecting it to a deeper plot, but for our purposes here, let's just call them bandits. That's what they do. Now the Etten boss's personal objective here is probably to not show any weakness to his orc underlings. So we're going to use the Etten boss to inspire his orc warriors, as well as striking fear into the heart of the PCs. So he's got to keep his orcs towing that line, So how do we use the Etten boss to keep the support of his orc allies? We're going to do this by giving him a couple legendary actions. Giving him a legendary action called Rallying Yell, calling any other orcs to him from the halls or whatnot of the encounter location. So what does this do? This respawns his orcs. Basically, he's going to roll 1d6 when he takes that action. He will succeed on a result of 5 or 6. And when that happens, basically, you will recharge a number of orcs that have been slain that round. Now you want this to make sense. You want them to come from a certain doorway or somewhere where they could have been hiding. You don't want to just plop them onto the map, any which way. I'd probably restrict the Rallying Yell to like 2 or 3 uses, just because how many orcs does this Etten actually have under his command? You want to think about that continuity stuff as you're planning this out. The next legendary action I want to talk about is called Battle Cry. Basically, he's going to give all of his melee fighting orcs advantage on attack rolls until the end of the round. So basically, when their turn comes up, he can use that to give advantage. I'm using that once, right? So I would only use that one time. The Monster Manual is going to tell you that legendary actions recharge on that monster's next turn. I don't like to use it that way unless I'm going to feature a big time showdown with a boss. So minions and spawners. I'm going to get into minions in a minute here when I start talking about lair actions, but as far as spawners go, we're using that Rallying Yell legendary action to initiate them spawners. But you want to pick a few locations to act as your spawn points, entry points of where those new creatures are going to enter. Also, don't forget, you probably want to put those new creatures on the end of the initiative order in order to allow them to benefit from the legendary actions of the boss. So let's talk traps. There's a lot of great videos out there talking about trap theory, how to spring them effectively, all that stuff. Well, I want to talk about placing them effectively and how you can use certain elements of your encounter as a trap. So, for example, in this case, I have these columns, right? I have 6 columns. I want to pick 2 of these columns and trap them to collapse. So with this Ettin and his Orc Bandits trap these columns to collapse? Probably not. This is their home, their lair, their stash. But this place is so ancient, perhaps the columns are ready to crumble on their own. So a player can make a DC 10 investigation roll or a proficiency check related to stone construction or masonry. Revealing these columns can be knocked over. You can assign those columns hit points. You can make a DC 15 strength check to knock it over. You know, that's up to you. And what I'm choosing to do with this is I'm assigning each one of these columns a number from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Basically what I'm going to do is when a column is knocked over, I'm going to roll a d6, and whatever the result is, that's the direction in a straight line the column is falling. So we got this one trapped and that one trapped, right? So let's say this dragonborn barbarian comes over here and is able to succeed on breaking this column, right? Let's say this column ends up falling in this direction here, right? Hitting 2 of these orcs. The damage we're assigning to this trap is 4d10 damage and will knock the creatures prone. Now that's enough to kill orcs. It's hopefully not enough to kill your PCs. Lower level PCs might have an issue with this, but we only got 2 of these columns and it might not happen at all. So if the column does fall on a PC, have them make a dex save 15. If they succeed, half damage and they aren't knocked prone. So the point I'm trying to get across is use the encounter space to your advantage. Make it fluid, make it changing. You don't have to specifically set a pit trap or a spike trap or a thing that shoots fire out of the walls. You don't have to mess around with that at all if you're using the encounter space as a trap itself. Perhaps the Ettin and the Orcs choose to lair here because it's dangerous. You know what I mean? Now just take all this as inspiration to come up with your own creative ways to use encounter space as a working element in the encounter. So I want to talk about lair actions a little bit. We're going to talk about minions as well. So in this encounter space, I have a chamber of loose sand. Now if a player ends his turn there and finds himself there at the start of the initiative order, on initiative count 20, we can trigger a lair action. Now this is Grasping Sands. There's an enchantment on this lair. So when we take this lair action, the sand will target 1 PC or 1 monster. So this is the monster's space. You want to make sure that they're aware of this sand, right? They would be, they're lairing here. Maybe it's one of their, hopeful security features, right? You want to use your monsters in a way that doesn't put them in that situation. Maybe the PCs will catch on and say, oh, look, the orcs, they're not entering the sand. That's probably what you want to hope for, because this could, this lair action could really tie up a character. So what Grasping Sands does is it targets 1 individual inside the loose sand area. And sand rises up and wraps around the target, hardening. And the target must succeed on a DC 15 dexterity save or become restrained. So it's like kind of, when the floor was lava when you were a kid, that kind of thing. The orcs are going to actively try to work their way around this sand. Once a player is grasped by this sand and restrained, we're going to use orcs with longbows to target these restrained individuals. So we got another lair action we're going to use. It's called Raising the Dead. So this Ettin and his orcs have decided to lair up in an old abandoned tomb. So what we're going to do is take this lair action, and we're going to give this one use, because we really don't need it more than that. It's a tension builder. It's a little bit of a thematic pepper on the whole encounter salad, if you will. So when we use this lair action, we're going to spawn 6 skeletons, and you can adjust their stats to the challenge rating of your encounter. So we're going to spawn 6 skeletons. So we're going to make these skeletons minions, right? We're going to give them 1 HP, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to use them to swarm the players. If your party's starting to feel overwhelmed with some of the lair action stuff, as well as the orc respawns, you can use these skeletons to tie up some of the orcs, giving your party a little bit of breathing room. Make sure you spring the raising of these skeletons on your party too. Make it surprising. They're probably going to look at these coffins anyway as kind of a little bit suspicious. If you can, wait to spring these skeletons on your party until they do something successful. Maybe the strongest member of your party ends up knocking one of the columns over on the Etten boss. When the party feels like they've turned the tide, release the skeletons. And if 6 skeletons don't seem like enough, add more. Just throw a bunch in there. Whether your party succeeds at the encounter or not, whether your party has defeated the boss monster and his underlings or not, we gotta look at how to end the encounter. So how do we do that? We gotta go back to the boss and monster objectives. If the objective of your encounter's boss was to slay the party, that's a pretty easy one. You either did or you didn't, right? Let's say your boss and its underlings' objectives were to slay the party and secure a magical weapon that they might have in their possession. Maybe your boss is to bring that weapon to his boss. Let's say an evil wizard or something like that. If the encounter's still going on and your boss slays the party member in possession of that weapon, takes the weapon, do you think he's going to stay around for the remainder of the combat, or do you think he might try to flee? He's got what he came for. Perhaps your encounter's taking place in a village and your boss and his underlings, they have orders to just burn down the village. When the PCs enter the encounter, they go to combat with the enemies. But as soon as the enemy burns down the town, do you think they're going to stick around to engage the party when their task is complete? We want to end the encounter in a way that's consistent with the boss and the monster's objectives. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode. If you found this useful, informative, helpful, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the little bell icon to be notified when we put other videos up. Also, yeah, feel free to throw stuff down in the comments. Until next time, I've been Nick. Bye, everybody. No, it says right here I can dismiss you as an action. Consistent with the boss and the monster's